Hello, my name is Ian Glover and I'm President of CREST-International. First of all, I'd like to sincerely apologise for not being with you at this particular event. It's extremely important to us. We believe that basic cyber hygiene is a really important concept and that the rollout of it within Malaysia would actually make a significant difference in terms of basic levels of cyber hygiene and also to protect small and large enterprise against the types of attacks we're seeing coming across the internet. CREST is a not-for-profit organisation. That's a very important concept for us because it means we set a bar extremely high and we have no reason to lower it for anybody. We break down our main activities in terms of 4 different areas. The first is the accreditation of companies. This is to make sure that the company is fit for purpose to do the types of activities that it's describing. We provide accreditation in penetration testing, cybersecurity incident response, cybersecurity related threat intelligence, and secure operations centres. So in other words, what we're doing is a lot of the heavy lifting on behalf of the buying community to make sure that organisation is fit for purpose in those areas. We conduct our audits by doing evidence-based assessments, on-site audits, and also some technology-based assessments as well. It's very stringent in terms of the way we do it, and we repeat the exercise annually, and then we complete the whole exercise again every 3 years. So we're always looking to make sure that the organisation's policies, processes and procedures are kept up to date and are fit for purpose. We combine that company accreditation with our professional level certifications. These are examinations of individuals to make sure they are skilled, knowledgeable and competent in the areas in which they wish to operate. Our examinations come in at around about 2,500 hours after you've entered the industry. This is at our practitioner level. This is somebody working with support or doing lower level stuff, including things like basic level cyber hygiene. We then move up to our registered level, which is around about 6,000 hours worth of regular and frequent experience, about 3 years. And then we move forward with that in terms of our certified areas, which is typically around about 10,000 hours. So in other words, 5 years plus regular and frequent experience. We don't actually measure that time in terms of the way we do our assessments, but typically that's what we expect and typically that's what we see in terms of people being able to and capable of passing our examinations. We tie that certification of the individual with the company element through effective codes of conduct. So in other words, the individual companies sign up to a code of conduct that says they will adhere to the policies, processes and procedures that they've submitted and that we've audited. And the individuals sign up that they will make themselves aware of those policies and processes and they will adhere to them. And we use those 2 principles in terms of any investigation we do on behalf of the buying community. In addition to those 2 main activities, what we also do is we provide professional development. We do that through running conferences, recording information. We have around about 400 hours worth of free content available on our YouTube channels. But we also do collaborative research in 2 areas. The first is areas where we think we can make a difference to help professionalise or to move the agenda forward in terms of cyber security related activities. So currently we are doing work on threat scenarios for the Internet of Things and autonomous vehicles. Recently we've completed work looking at industrial control systems assurance, and we've written a really good report on bug bounty programs. In addition to that, we also provide support in terms of our social responsibility, where we're looking at intervention points to stop young people going into cybercrime, working with law enforcement. We're working with the National Autism Society to make sure we're an open, inclusive industry and to make sure we have the tools and techniques to allow us to both employ and support those types of individuals. And then finally, although we don't do training, there is a potential conflict between a training provider who then does an examination because there is an expectation of passing. But we do work very closely with our academic partners and also our training partners to make sure they have access to our syllabuses, to make sure they have access to good people to help them to develop content and also to help to deliver them. And we do that right the way from the sort of school level, general understanding about careers and opportunities within cybersecurity, right the way up to specific education and training for professionals to augment and develop their career pathways. So that combination of those 4 elements are really the key foundations. The benefits that provides for government and regulators is it provides capacity. So in other words, what we're doing through career pathways and encouraging the very best people into the industry is actually building capacity within the marketplace and making sure those people that are skilled, knowledgeable and competent are recognised for their skills and are actually represented within their organisations at an appropriate level. It also helps us in terms of capability. So in other words, we're building both capacity and capability within countries and regions. We've seen it in other areas of Southeast Asia, particularly in Singapore, where we started off with a fairly immature marketplace. And within a very short period of time, we have a thriving cybersecurity industry with both really good companies and access to really good individuals. For the buying community, then our main purpose there is to provide access to trusted organisations who have access to skilled, knowledgeable and competent individuals. That combination of a trusted organisation and skilled individual is a really important concept when you're buying, and these things are very difficult to buy. So in other words, how do you assess somebody's capability if an externally recognised organisation has not done that? Again, in Southeast Asia, we're seeing significant moves in that area, particularly with the licence penetration testing that's coming through in terms of Singapore. We're also looking in terms of providing the buying community with procurement support and also access to metrics. So in other words, the ability to run maturity models against their organisation to see where they match in terms of benchmarking themselves against other industries and against other companies within their industry. For the suppliers of service, then really what we're trying to do is open up a marketplace, but more importantly, we're helping those organisations to develop in a way. A lot of the questions we ask in terms of our accreditation are really the things that will allow those organisations to grow and flourish. So that access to market, that true differentiator in the marketplace, and also their ability to assess their own capability is a really important concept. In terms of the cybersecurity professional, then what we're looking at there is a true career pathway, just like we see in other professions. And if we haven't got a career pathway, we're not going to encourage the best people into our industry and allow them to grow. From the professionalisation development, so in other words, we're looking at how we can develop people, then that pathway allows that professional development activities to take place, because you can identify the things you don't know and you can take steps to try to address them. From a training provider perspective, again, we're opening up marketplaces, but more importantly, we're helping them with the development of content, we're helping them with the development of their syllabus areas, and we're trying to provide access to a structured pathway where people can assign their particular training courses with a particular point in somebody's career. Right the way down to our support with academia, where we're providing direct support to universities, colleges, and even at a school level. But at universities and colleges, what we're doing is helping with the production of syllabus. We're helping with careers and ethics talk, access to really good people who can lecture. But really importantly, we're trying to open up that marketplace and allow those first jobs and those work placement opportunities to be available to young people. Really what we're trying to do, as I say, is build capacity and capability, both on a domestic and international basis. And that's really important if we're going to start to put in place basic cyber hygiene within Malaysia, because you need to build an overall ecosystem. We combine things together. So this concept of accredited companies with certified individuals, we combine those together into things we class as being schemes. Examples of these schemes include things like CBEST that we operate in conjunction with the Bank of England. This is looking at systemic risk areas within the UK financial services. Our members have carried out 38 of this primary systemic risk areas in terms of red teaming attacks based on threat intelligence. So in other words, to look right at the top of the stack is a very important thing to protect critical national infrastructure. The work we're doing with CBEST has been extended into other areas of Southeast Asia, including Malaysia, where we've got an agreement with Bank Negara, but also with MAS in Singapore and the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. I've recently signed an agreement with the Bank of Canada, and also we're working with the European Central Bank on a major implementation throughout the whole of Western continental Europe. So really important things, and this concept of intelligence-led penetration testing is really starting to move forward. We're also doing it for other sectors, including telecommunications. There's a scheme called TBEST, but we're looking at other areas of the critical national infrastructure as well, implementing similar techniques at that really top level for critical national infrastructure. Coming down the stack, we therefore look at some of the secure operating centres, network monitoring and logging, and also we run the incident response services on behalf of the UK government from an accreditation perspective, and on behalf of the NSA, where we also look at basic vulnerability assessment as well. So again, our accreditations are internationally recognised, and I think what we're trying to do in Malaysia is to build that ecosystem to provide access to your domestic capability, but also to provide you with access to international export. Right at the bottom of that stack is basic cyber hygiene. The example of the schemes I'll put here is Cyber Essentials, which we've implemented throughout the UK. We now have thousands of people that carry Cyber Essentials certificates, And what we've got is a large number of certification bodies and issuers that are allowed to issue certificates in this particular area. That basic level of cyber hygiene is really important because what we're seeing is an increased number of basic attacks. These are internet-based attacks using fairly standard techniques. And what we're trying to do there is to increase the capability of protecting an individual organisation against those basic level attacks. Around about 80% of the attacks we see coming across the internet are basic, and with basic cyber hygiene you'll be able to protect yourself. We're also seeing attacks coming from different areas. So where we're seeing organisations who are protecting themselves, they're now being attacked through their supply chain. So it's really important, if you've got a supply chain, that you understand that at least basic level cyber hygiene has been applied to them to make sure they're not the vulnerable chain link in your chain that will allow somebody to access your systems. So we're seeing basic cyber hygiene being applied within the supply chain quite significantly. In addition to that, we generally see the supply chain as being fairly weak, particularly small organisations who don't necessarily understand why they would be subject to an attack, and they don't necessarily understand how they fit in the system of supporting larger ones. So not only should they be aware of the need to protect themselves against ransomware and attack, but they should also understand their position in the supply chain and the vulnerability they could introduce to their clients. There's also limited take-up of some of the existing standards. Things like 27001 I really like in terms of an ISO standard. It's predominantly a security management thing and is quite heavy in terms of its implementation. What we're looking at here is basic level controls. What you should do is look at the overall ecosystem to make sure you've got some basic level of hygiene in place. The way that we came up with the standard for basic cyber hygiene was to first of all look at something that the UK government produced, the 10 steps to cyber security. We identified those things that we could carry out some form of technical assessment about, and we excluded things like awareness programs and policies. So these were things, tangible things from a technology perspective we could assess. What you need to do with any hygiene is actually then surround those with appropriate policies and procedures and awareness programs. But really we're identifying the primary areas where we believe that basic cyber hygiene could be applied. We also looked at the types of attacks that have been successful, and as I've mentioned, around about 80% of those are really very simple attacks that good patch management, good change control, etc. would actually help a great deal. So in other words, we've identified the areas where we think we can make the most impact for the least cost in terms of both its technical difficulty and in terms of the cost of implementation and management. In terms of working within Malaysia, we've done quite a lot of work within the country for some time. We have a formal agreement with Bank Negara where we're looking to try to develop both the ecosystem to deliver that critical national infrastructure, but also to provide greater levels of assurance in terms of the financial services. We've done quite a lot of work in terms of trying to build the ecosystem with some of your existing organisations, and also we are working very closely with individuals to move them forward in terms of a certification program that demonstrates their capability. We're also working with both remote and physical training providers to come into Malaysia to actually upskill the domestic capability to make sure it's fit for purpose for the domestic marketplace, as well as the potential for international export. This particular event is to mark the launch of the cyber hygiene work that we're doing in collaboration with the MCSC Cyberport and also ITGRC. I believe this is a really important piece of work. The memorandum that we've signed, I think, is really good. We've been working now with Cyber Essentials in the UK for more than 3 years, and we've learnt a lot of lessons since then. There's also other initiatives such as the NIST basic cyber hygiene work that's been done. There's been some work done by ANISA for Central Europe, and also some other areas of Southeast Asia have also been looking at basic cyber hygiene controls. And I think this is a really good opportunity to pull all of those international areas together to come out with an internationally recognised standard that we can implement on a much more consistent basis. And I think if Malaysia really embraces this, then they could be the forerunner for something really exciting that will not only help the domestic marketplace, but will also have significant international influence. We also apply our qualifications to the overall stack. So what we're trying to do with basic cyber hygiene is make sure that it's accessible and is available to everybody who needs it. Within Malaysia, you've got a large community of small enterprise as well as large, and we want to make sure that that basic cyber hygiene for the supply chain and for the protection of small organisations is in place. And what we need to do is to have the sign-off done by suitably qualified individuals. Whilst recognising if we're going to work at the critical national infrastructure area, then those individuals need significantly more skills to be able to do that in an appropriate way. So again, what we're trying to do in Malaysia is work with you to build that ecosystem to deliver it in a consistent way. Again, my sincere apologies for not being with you today. I would have really liked to have been. All of my contact details are available on the last slide. You've both got my telephone number and email address. If there's any questions at all about what we're trying to do, what CREST is trying to achieve on both a domestic and international basis, please feel free to contact me anytime. I really hope the rest of this event goes well, and I really hope to see you all soon. Thank you very much indeed.